Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome back to another Momentum Ministry Partners podcast episode. I'm super excited because today we're filming live at Momentum Youth Conference 2023, and we have one of our main session speakers, Pastor Mark Clark, here with us. Mark, welcome.
Sir, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. We're actually sitting in our podcast studio. I feel like a little bit like we're in the zoo.
Yeah,
students are walking by looking at us. They're signing up
for some Bible course or something, I'm sure.
Sports tournaments.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Something less
close,
spiritual.
Same thing. Yeah.
Right, yes, of course.
I love it.
Cool.
Well, Mark,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm loving that you're here. I love that how we got connected. Several of our team, I don't even know if we've told you this on some of the calls we've done, but several of our team have read your books. We've studied some of your stuff. We've been a fan of what you've done. We've watched your YouTube videos and you speaking at Bayside. And so God's using you in powerful ways. And we're like, hey, we're as an organization, we love looking where God's at work and trying to join him there. That's the old Henry Blackaby thing. Sure. And so that is super fun. We love that you're here. You did a power track this morning.
Yeah.
Before you were even in the main session. What were you talking about this morning?
Yeah, I was doing like a cultural apologetics stuff. So kind of took 4 or 5 major questions that skeptics, I grew up as a skeptic, didn't, grow up in church life. So, big questions on science and reason, hell, evil and suffering, Jesus, the Bible, resurrection, this kind of stuff. And just kind of talked about to the students, everyone's got a faith position. Christianity is the best idea in the marketplace of ideas. Why did I ever come to believe that? Because I studied philosophy and science and all these things and came to that conclusion. So kids seem to be, pretty zoned in. I thought they'd be a little sleepy. I think a couple of them didn't have much sleep, but they were zoned in. They were taking notes and they were into it. So I was surprising, but it was good.
I love it. The whole goal of this youth conference is, as you're aware, is we really want to equip students to own their own faith and to help them build momentum. Pardon the pun, but that's why this is organization is named that way. That would be a good name
for an organization.
Exactly. Where we're wanting to send them back home in their youth ministries to have tools and resources to live out their faith, to own their faith throughout the rest of the year. So
that's great.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here. Mark, you you're the founding pastor of Village Church, multiple locations across Canada. How did that even get started? Because tell us even a little bit like leading into that.
Yeah, so I moved out to Vancouver. I was born and raised in Toronto and moved out to Vancouver. Got married. I was 23. Moved across, and we didn't know anybody. I mean, there was like no family, no friends, no anything. So the plan was to be in Vancouver for 2 years, because really my passion was academics.
Yep.
I really wanted to go into the academic world. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to go overseas and do a PhD.
Yeah.
Because as you know, people are the worst. And so I'd rather hang out with footnotes than people.
There you go.
And so, people send emails about the volume of the music and cheat on their spouse and, just are dumb. So I was like, I just want to be with words and concepts. And then God was like, no, I want you to start a church here. So we'd already been there for probably 5 or 6 years at this time. And so we planted 16 people in my living room, 2010, and just started kind of dreaming up what a church would look like. Got an elementary school gym and started preaching and teaching the Bible verse by verse. Took us 3 years to get through the book of Matthew, 3.5 years, I think, because I just get excited about every verse, Anyway, and people started meeting Jesus, getting baptized, going to multiple services, kept growing. And so over time, it became a multi-site church, video stuff around Vancouver, Calgary, Alberta, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Toronto, Ontario, which none of your listeners are going to know where any of those places are. They don't.
They're like
care.
Canada. Oh
Yeah. Well, isn't that the what's going on up there? There's a bunch of people wrestling
north of Michigan.
Yeah. Polar bears.
I love it when you say like that. Our plan was like to just kind of be there for a couple years. Like, isn't it true? Like when you kind of like tell God your plans and he's like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah, that's cute.
Like you think you're. You think you're
exactly.
funny.
No, it was very interesting. Yeah, it was like a very. I was in a church building, and it was just like the Holy Spirit just went, there was someone talking about church planting, actually, and the Spirit just said, he's talking about you.
Wow.
And this is what you're going to do. And I was like, what? No.
Wow.
Why would I plant another church? There's lots of churches, and they're half empty.
Yeah.
And it was like, no. And then I began to research and realize that planting new churches is one of the fastest forms of evangelism, one of the most effective on the planet, because you reach new people and new people groups. And so we were like, okay, let's do that, because that's kind of what I live for. And,
That's
rest is
amazing.
history. So we did that for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then this past April, I moved down to Bayside in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that process like? How hard was that to like
very hard.
Leave?
Still hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, by that time you have all these people across these campuses. You have, I think there was over 100 staff, so it was a big deal. A lot of people made a lot of sacrifices and leaned into the church, and but God was being pretty clear about, and I'd always told the church, to be honest, like, I'm not saying I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. If God calls me somewhere else, if Jesus walks into my bedroom and tells me to get out of here, I'm going to get out of here. And that's just what it is.
Yep.
And so for 12 years, I've been saying that from a stage. Not that I had planned on it.
Yep.
But it just became clear through like 13 different things that happened. I was like, okay, the next 20 years of my life looks like down there. And that's the next part of the journey. Got 3 daughters, and they're excited about it. I mean, less rain in Sacramento for sure than Vancouver, but
Nice.
So they're excited. They're involved in ministry. I mean, my hope is that my daughters love Jesus and love the church.
Yeah.
And if those two things happen, and right now that's happening. They're serving Jesus and doing worship ministry stuff and leadership and youth and all that. So, and thanks for what you guys do. You guys are the heroes. I did youth ministry for a lot of years. And it is really an amazing thing that you're doing. As you know, all the stats point to kids coming to know Jesus and then losing their faith later. And so pouring in at this stage is like crucial. So good job.
So thank you.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to go back a little ways.
Yeah.
You said growing up, you were a skeptic.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about that. How did God, because I know you're gifted with apologetics. Like we've brought Sean McDowell's been at this youth conference for a long time. He's a good friend. Like he's built in with momentum. We love that. But we wanted a different voice this year, hence bringing you and speaking into that. Our students, we're seeing they are hungry for, they want to defend their faith. They want to be knowledgeable. They don't want to argue and debate with people, but they want to like be engaging and like listen and learn. Yeah. So how does that all connect with your story and growing up as a skeptic?
I grew up in a home where like never church. So no Bible, no prayer, no God, not even Christmas and Easter, nothing. As I said in the message yesterday night or whatever, my dad was such an ardent atheist that he literally said, my mom is not allowed to spell my brother's name with 2 T's. His name was Matthew, because that name is biblical. And so my brother's name is Matthew with 1 T, and then 4 years later they had me and named me Mark. So clearly this guy had never picked up a Bible before in his life. And my middle name's Andrew, and my brother's middle name is James. So we got 4 disciples kicked out right off the bat, and this guy doesn't have a clue. So, so that was my life growing up. So by the time I'm like 18, I do some research. Some people talk to me about Jesus. I had heard about Jesus at a summer camp when I was a kid. Once my parents got divorced, my grandfather, who was the only other Christian in my family, prayed, and he sent me there. So I heard about Jesus, accepted Christ, but it didn't I wasn't doing anything with it. Yeah. And then I was about 17, 18. A guy approached me in woodworking class, told me about Jesus, and I was just like, boom, came alive. And for 2 years, I did nothing but smoke a pack of cigarettes and read the Bible outside of my school and tell people about Jesus, walk around my town at 1 o'clock in the morning. But I started researching because I'm a thinking person. I'm a feeling person too. I love the arts and I love, feely stuff. But oftentimes Christianity gets the rap of being, it's developed from the place of we used to be the thinkers and now we're just the sentimental feelers.
Yeah.
We're anti-science, anti.
Yeah.
And we forget, like, Christianity established all these universities that, science is a Christian endeavor that assumes, 14 different things about the realities of the world so that we can actually do hypothesis and, experimentation and verification and do it on repeat. All of these things that no other worldview was really giving way to. So science, modern science, was birthed out of Christian ideas. And philosophy was too. And so we forget that, and we become the anti-science people or the anti-philosophy people. People go to 1 year of university and they think, now I believe in philosophy, I can't believe in Christianity. Or now I believe in biology, I can't believe in Christianity. And it was like, so I started researching, going down that road, and just realizing these two things sync up. Wow. And doing a lot of reading and realizing the deeper, I was listening to Newbegin talks about there's more atheists in the humanities departments than there are in the science departments. There's at least theists in the science departments because they're studying evidence. They're not just reading novels, and they're deducing things about the world. So I started researching that, the legitimacy of the Bible, the historicity of Christianity, all these things, and just came to realize that Christianity is the best idea in the marketplace of ideas, and I wanted to give myself to it. And so I did, and it took 2 years to ever walk into a church. I didn't want to go to church.
Did you go with the guy who was sharing?
No, different
Jesus
guy.
Okay.
No, so that guy told me about Jesus. He discipled me for a bit, and then I was off kind of by myself. And then there's one guy, he was constantly begging me, like, come to church, and it was a Baptist church. And I remember thinking, here's the deal. This thing's going to, smell like mothballs, be orange shaggy carpet, and everyone's going to be 200 years old. And I got there, and it was exactly like that. But it was, God met me there, and there was girls there. So I was like, you know what? I love church. This is fantastic. Sign me up 3 days a week. And met my wife, and the rest is history.
Stop! You met your wife there
first
at
day.
That church?
First
No
day, she was
way.
singing up front in the worship team, and I'm like, bro,
Worship's cool.
Worship's cool, and she's great. And I was actually dating another girl at the time, and broke up with her, and then started dating Aaron like within a week or two.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. What a jerk!
All
what a jerk.
this because
I just sounded like a jerk.
Dude, I love that.
I guess that's what dating is. You're just exploring until you find the one, and you trade them out.
Can I be honest? One of the things that I love about you and your style and communication is like you say what people are thinking, and I love that. It's refreshing. It's like
that's one way of putting it.
We're all thinking that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The students are like waving at us. Yeah. That's so funny. I know. I love that. Like all of that began, and thinking about like the whole pathway that you just shared about like planning these churches and starting your living room and going to the elementary school and then like multi-site and all these things, all because your grandfather's praying.
Yes.
And a friend at school was bold enough to share the gospel.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Quite a combination. Yeah.
It's so simple. Sometimes we take these things for granted.
Yes.
So share a little bit about the two books that you've written, Problem of God and Problem of Jesus. Like, I love that you're a thinker. You're like, I want to know all the things.
I want to know all the things.
Dive deep into it. And you're helping people make sense of this, which is a big deal. Like, it's the Michael Scott, like, now tell me like I'm a 5-year-old. Like, that is so helpful.
I love it.
But you're so good at that, and that's needed in our culture today.
Yeah.
So walk us through kind of the concept of these books.
Yeah. The problem of God is kind of the top 10, like, reasons skeptics challenge Christianity and my answers to them. So, reason and faith, science, the historicity, the legitimacy of the Bible, evil and suffering, hell, sex, exclusivity, hypocrisy, kind of the big 10, in some ways, of the reasons. At least I was like, I don't want to become a Christian. Probably the longest,
all the easy things.
Yeah, probably the longest chapter in the book's on sex, which is interesting because I've never read an apologetics book where it even dealt with sex, even though we all know that the reason 90% of these people aren't becoming Christians is like, I don't want to do sex that way. I want to do it the way I want to do it. And so whether it's, Richard Dawkins or, there's a bunch of Christopher Hitchens, like all these guys were admitting, even if you go further back, Bertrand Russell, these guys were admitting sexuality was the reason they weren't interested. So anyway, whole chapter on that. whole chapter on what's called the Christ myth. This kind of idea that Jesus never existed. He's just kind of he's an archetype built off of Horus and Dionysus and Mithras. All this. So I go into all those myths and show that there aren't any parallels to Christ. All that stuff. So it's the top kind of 10 big skeptic, and I try to make it easy for people to understand. Lots of stories, lots of illustrations, all that stuff. But then a lot of research on the other hand. So that's the problem with God. And then the problem with Jesus is kind of let's say God exists. What about this Jesus guy?
Right.
Did he exist? How did the Gospels work? And then a whole bunch of stuff about, the problem of discipleship, the problem of miracles, the problem of Jesus stories, all the stuff. And anyway, it's kind of my Jesus book after reading about Jesus for 25 years.
So good.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll sell some books for you. Go get those on Amazon.
Yeah, there you go. It's a little mom and pop shop. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Love it. I love it. All right, so let's kind of shift gears, because part of the culture of this youth ministry, part of the culture of Momentum Ministry Partners, we really are passionate about helping to raise up and equip the next generation of pastors. Really what we want to do, we leverage our youth conference, we leverage all of our ministry opportunities through everything that we do in such a way so as to help raise up the healthy leadership in a church, both the pastors, the ministry professionals, we call them, and then the missional marketplace leaders.
That's great.
So think like every healthy church, like you're talking about, like you need the staff, but you also need to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, and that's the laity, that's the volunteers, that's the people who love Jesus and live and work in the community. We're crazy passionate about not just pastors seeing those people as the funding behind we're going to tithe and give to the church, but actually valuing their heart and mind as well.
Of course.
So here this week at our youth conference, everything we're doing is trying to help students know who Jesus is, understand the calling that God has for them in their life. And a lot of these students, probably some that were in your power track and some that are listening to you speak in the main session, they're feeling God's call into full-time vocational ministry. And yet for a lot of them, I've been a pastor for a long time, they're hearing pastors talk about, man, ministry is hard. Ministry is rough. What's your perspective on that? Are you seeing that in your culture, in your circles of influence? How we can quote stats all day long about the crisis that's coming in America, the aging of pastors, their burnout, their quitting, all that. But how do you see students coming into this, and what's that mindset?
It's great. It's exactly what, if you think about the demographics that we're seeing, what is the one top demographic that hasn't returned to church since COVID? It's boomers.
Yep.
So the same thing is going to happen in ministry. COVID did something to the boomer mentality. And so we need you as youth, however old you are, to grow up into that, because we've lost, in a sense, a generation, not only of the marketplace leaders, but of the ministry people. They're not finding it invigorating, so they're quitting for whatever reason. And so maybe that's changing up what ministry looks like, and ministry, pastoring just looks so different in every different context, right? What it's like to pastor you're from Ohio?
Yeah.
Ohio to Sacramento, California, to Vancouver, unfortunately.
God, don't call me to Africa. Ohio.
Yeah, there's a lot of corn there. So it looks so different, and then the size of your church looks so so it's kind of what is a pastor's, and the main thing for me is don't try to fit into somebody else's mold of what a pastor should be. There's a lot of people who immediately with me, bro, dude, this guy's not a pastor.
So good.
And it's the amount of mistakes I made, and I talked about this in the talk, the amount of mistakes I made, the amount of comparison. Hey, we need you, the story I told, we need you, the first church I ever preached at, okay, they said this, we need you, when you open your sermon, to tell a joke. And I'm like, okay, what is that? What do you mean? I tell stories. They're like, no,
a guy walked into a bar.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So it's hey, tell a joke.
Word.
So I'm like, all right, 2 Jews and a hooker walk into a bar, right? And it's you know what? You don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. Because it's that's not you. Why are you trying to be some other pastor and some other, it doesn't work. So what are you wired for? There was lots of things I didn't do as a pastor. That I don't do as a pastor, that a lot of people might think I should. And there's other stuff I do that other pastors don't do, And so you got to constantly, and again, depending on your context, we're a church of 200 people, and you got to be all things to all people. It's sometimes a little bit different. You can't be as specialized, but playing to your strengths, recognizing you can't be all things to all people, and once you're in your kind of zone where you're playing to your gifting, then ministry is fun.
Yes.
Right? And this is kind of what you're alluding to. We're constantly pitching being a pastor as like, oh, it's the grind. You'll be poor. Your family will never see you.
Yeah.
And it's like my whole philosophy, a guy wrote a book a bunch of years ago called Cheat the Church. It's like, I got my main ministry are my kiddos, my wife, and like beyond that, I'm not going to cheat them. So of course I work hard at the church, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I don't have to keep proving to the church that I'm some martyr. It's like, how many pastors have you hung? Oh, I got the wounds to prove it. The sheep are biting these days. And I was like, oh gosh. It's like, then go do, I'm not saying you should go do something else because ministry can be hard, but it's also amazing.
Yes.
You get amazing things. You get perks that other people don't get.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. You get to hang out with amazing people. You get to talk about Jesus for a living and paid for it.
Dude, thank you. Let's go there.
Yeah.
What are some of those? Like, for sure, because I think sometimes pastors don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
We don't talk about, like, I get to have a front row seat to watch what God does. I get to see the light bulbs come on for these people that we're leading.
Yeah.
Where, like, as we work through the whole of Scripture and they realize, wow, God's actually speaking to me, and this makes a difference in my daily life. Like, what are some of those things that you see?
Yeah. Well, those. Seeing the light, So when I wanted to become a professor, I remember, to your point, one day my professor, I was at Regent, and he asked me to come down and teach a class. I was doing a master's thesis on Romans 9-11. Not that there's anything been written about that. And so, I'm going down rabbit holes that are down rabbit holes. And he said, hey, I want you to come into a 3-hour lecture with our students. So I go in, and I'm taking them through Romans and blah, blah. And I'm parsing out Greek verbs. I did Greek for 3 years. So it's pluperfect, first person, nominative, And I remember the night before I'd been preaching and people were coming to Christ. And I'm like, that contrast.
Wow.
I was like, sitting here with these master's students parsing Greek verbs versus like seeing the gospel change people on the spot. Wow. I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think this, So like you said, there's beautiful realities. There's the ability, my wife and I were talking about this the other day. So pastors, we see this beautiful thing at Bayside where pastors can bring, like there was a youth retreat this week. And they're all away. And the pastors bring their families. So all the little kiddos are running around.
That's a great
They're
idea.
on a youth thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, what other job can you bring your family and no one balks?
Yes.
Like, you brought your wife and kids to the youth thing for a week? You mean you didn't have to just disappear and your boss goes, what are you doing with that? Like, there's so many beautiful things about ministry that are like people are going out of their way to love and serve. All of this stuff, we're in people's heavy times, but we're also able to provide a beautiful service to them in times of suffering and whatever, or to be able to like run in the leadership lane. And like, how many people do you know who work as a nurse, have a podcast, who get to sit around on a microphone and have conversations?
It's touching a little close to home here, buddy.
And build their whole life on it. It's like this isn't like they're busy. Yeah. They got a nurse, and then they go home and they work at home, and then so what a beautiful thing we get to do. We're in the ideas world.
Yes,
we're not tacticians in the sense of like we're digging a hole. Though sometimes I wish it was that. Like digging a hole feels pretty good. Yeah, you start it, you finish it. It's like, oh, this is like an Adam thing. My hands are dirty.
Love
but we're in the ideas world. We get to think and extrapolate, which is why I have a little bit of a short fuse for like the people who get into ministry and then they deconstruct because they had all the freedom and luxury in the world to sit around and read books and think too much,
Yep.
And then they're like, well, I'm going to leave the church and do this other big reactionary thing or whatever. And it's like you read Paul when he's writing to Timothy and he's going, what is a person in ministry?
Yeah.
They're a farmer, an athlete, and a soldier.
Yep.
They didn't get into ministry because there's warm spaces, no heavy lifting, and some coffee, and they didn't have anything else to do. So they said, let me go be a pastor. It's like you're getting up, you're working hard, you're disciplined, you're going after it. Yeah. But there's a lot of great fruit from it too.
Oh, that's so good. I love like what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 1, that like we get invited into the work of the ministry, and we get to like comfort those in the same ways that God has comforted us. And so I think sometimes there is this like challenge where God leads us through trials and tests, and we're called to consider it joy when we face those. And yet, like nothing's wasted in his kingdom. And so when ministry is hard, because there are times where it's hard.
Of course it is.
Every book in the New Testament talks about that. We're going to have persecution. It's going to be hard.
People turn on you,
There'll be
backstab
trials
you.
and
We've had lots of that stuff.
But to get to look at how God uses it, when that's your perspective, is super fun. Yeah. So talk about your podcast, because I know you guys are just starting one at Bayside, Off the Record.
Yeah, mine's called Off the Record. So we're trying to do like a whole bunch of Bayside stuff. We started something called the Thrive Collective. We have something called the Thrive Conference every May, which any of your listeners want to come to that. It's a blast. It's just a whole bunch of speakers and beach balls flying all over the place. And it's just super fun.
California, I'm in.
Dude, we're an hour from Napa.
I'm in.
So I don't know if your listeners are into Napa. We're 2 hours from San Francisco, an hour from Tahoe. Anyways, it's a great conference, beginning of May, Thrive Conference. And then we started something called the Thrive Collective, which is we want every church leader to be a part of it. We offer these 8 things to get all the church leaders together and actually think and kind of the world's biggest fire pit, we're calling it. Like, let's get around and build relationship.
Nice.
And then my podcast in particular is called Off the Record, which I've only done 3 episodes. So
go check
it's
them
not
out.
The greatest.
Go check them
it's
out.
not Joe Rogan at this point, but but I also don't make, I record once every month.
Yeah.
So, but I am trying to put one out every week or 2. Probably come the fall, it's easier. Called Off the Record. And I just have like random conversations off the record, like, hey, don't keep me accountable for these. This is not Bayside approved. This is Mark Clark approved.
There you go.
So I think the first episode was on AI, technology, and deep fakes, and how that's affecting all of us. And is this going to kill us, or is this a tool? Yeah. And of course, it's going to kill us.
Won't be long now.
We've all
said
seen
it out loud. It's on.
We've all seen T2. We already know where this goes. Why did we do this to ourselves? And the guy I interviewed, he's a sports guy, and he's like, it's all good. All he does is watch sports. And he's like, amazing. AI is not going to hurt us. It's a tool. I said, bro, you got to start watching less sports and more movies.
There you go.
Because this is going to kill us all for sure in the next decade. Anyways.
I love it.
I'm calling it now, folks. So anyways, so the first one was on AI and deep fakes and all that. Yeah. And pastors are preaching, so you just type something into Chat GPT, give me a 6-point sermon, use 2 N.T. Wright quotes, a Martin Lloyd Jones quote, and boom, it's done. It's crazy. Yeah. Anyways, that was a very specific thing I just said. It's
oddly specific.
It's not like I've done this.
Hypothetically
speaking, if you could, no, I actually haven't. I am way more old school.
I'm going to go back and listen to the message and see if you quoted N.T. Wright.
Yeah, see if no, like 6 points. So anyway, ChatGPT and deepfakes. What was the second one on? Stay in your lane, the will of God. And then the third one was on, we just hired a pastor. He's written a bunch on deconstruction and deconversion, and when you lose your faith and doubt. And he's written a lot about that. A really smart guy. Apologetics. Dominic Doan is his name. Okay, yeah.
Because when we were checking out for Bring You, yes. That conversation was super good.
It's great. Yeah, so those are the 3.
Yes.
Those are the top 3 on the podcast.
I love that. Okay.
By top 3, I mean the only 3.
One more question. Thrive Collective.
Thrive Collective.
What's the goal of that? Like, it sounds like you're wanting
awesome.
Pastors to be healthy.
Yes.
And thrive maybe in their ministry?
So it kind of starts with that Barna thing, 80% of pastors want to quit or whatever. And then it's like, hey, what can we do about it? Meaning, when you work at Bayside, the staff is so high, like it's world-class people all gathered in one spot. And it's like if all we did was run Bayside, it would probably be a waste.
Wow.
We have more to offer the world than just running this church. So we came up with 8 things that start with C. I work with a lot of guys who are like, I'm really bad at that.
They're like, it took me 3 days to come up with these.
8 C's and 2 poems. And so
Thank you, Chat
I'm not
GPT.
going to even probably remember. Yeah, exactly. Remember all these C's, but they're incredible. So one of them is church planting. So we want to plant as a collective. We want to plant 100 churches in the next 10 years.
Sweet.
Before the AI gets us.
Sweet.
So 100 churches in the next 10 years, and like 50 of those in California.
Yeah.
We want to offer like cohorts.
Yeah.
Coaching. So we have like this thing in October. We're going to go Palm Springs. We're going to do 2 days of coaching, and then there's one in Newport Beach, and we're going to coach on preaching, fundraising, leadership, all this stuff. Bringing in Christine Kane for that one. Like, there's just a whole bunch of C's that we're going to conferences. And we just want to be a resource. So I think we pitched it at the Thrive conference this year, and I think 800 pastors signed up in 24 hours. And it's like, hey, so now we're just doing newsletters or curated content out every week right now and giving people opportunity to sign up. So anyway, join the Thrive Collective if you're a pastor out there going, bro, I don't know anybody. I don't have any resources, because we're going to start. One of the C's is content. So we're going to be like, here's our sermon stuff. Here's our children's stuff. Here's our breakaway material that we do every year. We had 5,000 kids at our summer camp this year.
Wow.
7,000 kids and 5,000 volunteers,
That's
which is
amazing.
such an interesting ratio.
That's amazing.
When I was running church, it was like
Yeah,
1 to 40 ratio.
Yes.
This church has got it
getting
zoned
better.
in. It's like kids were just running around.
Oh my
where
word!
they were.
Mark, it's like
was church
it's like
planning.
you were on the Momentum website and you're like stealing all our ideas.
Oh,
Or
okay,
maybe-
yeah, it's
maybe
called-
vice
it's
versa,
called
maybe
Thrive
vice
Collective
versa.
Momentum.
I love it, but like honestly, like I'm seeing God doing this in churches right now, and the pendulum will swing back. I'm like, when you read Scripture, like, oh right, God will
We should
build
do
his
this
church.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have our big conference at the
so cool.
Indiana Wesleyan College next year, which is crazy.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Well done. Well done. All right. So one last question for you. We're time's wrapping up here. What advice would you give to a young person who is feeling a call into full-time ministry? What maybe did you wish that you had known way back when? And
I had such a good experience. I mean, definitely get people to affirm it that are around you and know you and that you trust. Spiritual leaders, family, friends. That's where mine started.
Yeah.
Was 3 people. God had told 3 people in my life that I was supposed to do this, and he hadn't told me yet.
wow.
And they got me around a fireplace, and they said, this is what you're supposed to do. And then another guy who they didn't know told me in the same week the exact same thing, and told them that God had told him. So I was like, okay, now something's going on. I better pay attention.
Yep.
So I got into it because of that reason. Definitely get 1 or 2 mentors. I mean, I'm the product of a mentor who took me under his wing. I mean, here's the deal. I was smoking cigarettes out in front of the church, loving Jesus, love the Bible.
Yeah.
Guy walks up to me and he says, I want you to preach next weekend. I'm like, okay, great. So, like, put down the cigarette, walk
People
up,
are like,
preach.
Canada is wild.
Dude,
right now.
crazy, right? No, but I think one of the principles of ministry is you got to give people opportunity maybe before they're ready.
Amen.
And so I got up and preached. He was an amazing youth pastor. Took me in his ring, poured into me. Ironically, here's the interesting thing about life. 2-3 months ago, he gets in touch with me. He says, hey, I'm now working at a church in someplace. And he goes, I wanted to me and Carrie Newhoff, you know who Carrie Newhoff is?
Yeah.
So we have this preaching class called The Art of Better Preaching. And he goes, I want to take that course, but I don't have the funds. The church doesn't have the funds to be able for me to take it. So maybe one day I can take it. Anyway, just wanted to let you know you're doing awesome. And I'm like, what? So obviously I give the guy a free code.
Yes.
The guy who mentors me when I'm a 19-year-old chain smoker is asking to take my preaching course 25 years later.
Wow.
Right? So this is what God does in life. Get a mentor, get under someone who can lead you and guide you.
That's fun.
And I had them in the academic world as well, and I've had them kind of everywhere I've gone. And
Fun.
Anyway, I don't know. What else you got?
At Momentum, we have a phrase where we talk about play your freshman.
Love it.
And
that's great.
It's that exact idea of like you need opportunities before you're ready.
Yes.
And to provide safe space, to give feedback, to give constructive criticism, 100%. To give encouragement.
Yeah.
And so here at our youth conference, it's super fun. You'll see this. All of our Momentum band, they're like under 25 probably, but they're all like leading. Jordan Howerton, who's the worship pastor at Christ Church in the Valley in Phoenix, Arizona, has been here, and he's for years been like investing in these students and coaching
So
them,
good.
training, equipping them. He's actually here this year, but he's not even on the stage. He's behind the scenes. He's hanging out with them. He's coaching them. Last night at the session, he's like, "Hey, let's do this song instead of this one. Here's why." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so good."
Love it.
But that's that heartbeat of like when God calls you in, He'll equip you. He'll provide the resources.
Yeah.
He'll help you figure out those steps.
Yeah.
So,
Love it.
Mark, thank you
Great.
for being
Great.
here,
Well,
for sharing the
thank
story.
you. I'm excited.
Yeah. Thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in to another episode. Mark, thank you for being here. Thank you for what God's
Appreciate
doing
it.
in and through you.
Amen.
Yeah.
And through you guys too.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more, and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.